Welcome to another episode of Twice Told Tales podcast. Today we're going to talk about one of the most important rallies against the war that was just recently held in Washington, D.C. And Chris was there. So, Chris, can you tell me about the rally, who organized it, what was it about, and when exactly it was held?
Well, it's a very ambitious project that was launched by Nick Brana of the People's Party to form a broad coalition uh, among various divergent political views in order to oppose war. And this was a typical thing back, with activism in the past, but in the recent decades, America has become politically divided to the point where forming coalitions has become like forbidden among especially members of the liberal class. So it was sort of, the People's Party isn't right wing. They're sort of an apolitical party, and a lot of former liberals have joined that party. So it was ambitious, and it was a great initiative, and it was a great success. So the People's Party was joined by the Libertarian Party, TNT Radio, which I didn't know about. I just saw that on their sponsor list when I looked at it because I wanted to be able to give an accurate take. TNT Radio is a very interesting project. I would love to know who's producing that radio network, but they have like 40 different hosts, and they're like nonstop streaming live, like basically live podcasts. Some of them are very offensive Zionist producers, but some are extremely anti-Zionist. So they have a really broad range. They obviously, and they have quite a good number of podcasts that talk about the science surrounding climate change. So if anyone's interested in some interesting talk radio while they work or whatever, they can always go to that TNT Radio. And then Food Forest Abundance sponsored them, which is a very interesting kind of permaculture group. The Mises Caucus, which is a reactionary group within the Libertarian Party that sort of tried to refocus the Libertarian Party on anti-war issues. The Libertarian Party has sort of slowly migrated towards more establishment lines like every political party does, and Mises Caucus was a movement to move them back towards their original focus. Because it was a new movement, the word Mises freaked out people because they hadn't heard it before, and so that was used to weaponize opposition against this march, because they said, oh, the Mises is a racist group of people who've decided to become racists in the Libertarian Party. Black Agenda Report published this insane article calling it a white anti-war rally and a white supremacist anti-war rally, and they said the Mises Caucus is the example of how these are white supremacists. But nobody actually went and looked at what the Mises Caucus is about, and it's just it's frustrated libertarians trying to get their party to focus, primarily on anti-war issues. That has nothing to do with race. Libertarians don't care about race. So it's very funny how that you can weaponize novelty like that. And then Occupy Peace and Freedom, a couple other libertarian parties, and those were the official sponsors. And so basically there were a lot of great speakers that came out to speak on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, where famous speeches have been delivered in the past, like the I Have a Dream speech. I think that was there. Yeah, that's a very famous photo of Martin Luther King standing there. So there were, Ron Paul was there, which was quite impressive considering his age. He traveled from Texas to be there, and he rarely travels. Nice. So, and he's an important anti-war activist, even though there domestic issues with the libertarians that I don't agree with. It doesn't really matter. The idea is to form a coalition, and a lot of liberal groups, including Code Pink and Veterans for Peace. Shockingly, Veterans for Peace. I already knew Code Pink was kind of was working to be divisive in the anti-war movement and protest movements in general. But I was surprised that Veterans for Peace voted against participating, because they were so pivotal in the anti-Iraq war protests.
And why do you think they chose not to participate?
I think because
they
they're
not just
infested. I think the kind way of interpreting it would be they're infested with millennials who themselves have been overcome by woke ideology, which basically prevents critical thinking. And so
right.
they just kind of are reactionaries to anyone who says anything about trans or gay rights or whatever, even though if we're all blown up by nuclear weapons, those rights become meaningless. So it's sort of stupid.
And what about Code Pink? Can you explain, because there were two people at least from the Code Pink that were part of
Anne Wright is an associate who hangs out around the Code Pink circles. Who's the other one?
And Medea was there, but she didn't speak, right?
Oh yeah, but Anne Wright did speak. But Anne Wright is she's her own independent person. But I guess Medea, what she claims is that she is she wants to be able to work with Code Pink in the future, and so she decided not to talk or promote the event, which is, I think, I don't know. Personally, I think it really made me lose a lot of respect for her as a person of strength and principle, honestly, because if you're facing nuclear annihilation and you have crazy people at the top who are driving us towards nuclear annihilation, and you want to platform some weird social issue that only affects a very, very small portion of society over top of the large portion of society that could be obliterated in economic or nuclear collapse because of this war, it just seems insane and seems really selfish and self-serving. So I feel like she was a very selfish person to put her own needs of having to work with the organization that has no mission anymore. I mean, if it's an anti-war organization, that organization should put anti-war struggle as the top priority in their mission statement. But they should really rebrand themselves as a trans LGBTQ organization who sometimes does anti-war activism, because that's what they are now. But instead they're pretending to be an anti-war organization when they're really not. And then Medea, I mean, she obviously has a history of doing a lot of activism and stuff, and she basically threw that in the garbage because she's now saying that her own selfish needs to be associated somehow with this organization that she started, even though she's not officially a employee anymore. She's just I think she's still maybe a member of the board. She didn't even want to risk that position to maintain her own principles. So,
but did Anne Wright speak as representing Code Pink?
They took every reference to Code Pink out of her bio. But I think she was on the board for a while. I don't know if she's currently a board member, but she traveled to Iran with our delegation, her and Medea as well. So, I really respect Anne Wright. She was a whistleblower. She came out after working in the Air Force, and that was a really a strong move on her part. I think she's very principled. She's obviously principled because she said, well, okay, I'm going to leave Code Pink and I'm going to do this on my own. And Medea could have done the same thing. She could have said, I'm just speaking as Medea, but she didn't even do that. So it's very pathetic.
That's true.
I think she should not be looked upon as any kind of a guru for activism in the future, because she won't lead you anywhere good. She'll lead you to just wandering around behind podiums and shaking hands with people. That's all she did. And for the month leading up to this event, she didn't use her clout and her following to promote it. So, and I think she's now using that to promote another rally, which is competing with it, which is the complete opposite of how you form coalitions. Coalitions are supposed to be broad, that they're strong because they include people of very different ideologies. If you have just all the people, only trans rights activists can be anti-war. You're going to never end war ever. In fact, people will never hear of you because there's just so few. I mean, when you combine issues and you say you have to be with this issue in order to be with that issue, you automatically eliminate people from being with either one of those issues. So the point is, in coalitions, you just have one issue and you all go around it and you get that issue taken
Yeah.
care of, and then you go
It
back to
shows
squabbling
people.
about the other issues. It's like high
Exactly.
school.
It
People
shows
are
your
doing-
priorities. Like, what do you prioritize over? I mean, what is more important than preventing a war? You could discuss or choose
Apparently, whether or
not to
not
discuss.
an adult biological man can compete against women in sports,
Yeah.
and defeat, and like unfairly defeat them in sports, or whatever. He can show his genitalia in the women's locker room or whatever. It's all just craziness that they've just somehow
It's true.
manipulated the society to go along with. I mean, I'm for people doing what they want to do, doing their thing. If you're trans, I'll call you a woman or a man or whatever you want, but we don't need to talk about it further than that. That's it. Okay, but we don't need to.
Exactly.
Like, why are we even talking about that? What trans rights should be a moot point if you're actually wanting to be one or the other gender. Okay, you're that, but we don't need to talk about it. If we talk about it, then you're automatically, like, you're creating your own freakhood. If you
Mhm.
create trans narratives, you're creating your own freakishness because you wanted to be trans, you converted to the other one, then you're the other one. But the talking about it makes you like your whole life a fraud, right? Because you're not living the role genuinely of the gender that you're choosing. And that's, I think, what
Mhm.
it is people just want to be special, and so they've created this new class of specialness where they can nonstop talk about their psychological problems, and
Mhm.
it's very
Yeah,
unhealthy because now it's
it is.
derailing people trying to stop a escalation to nuclear war, and yeah.
Yeah, and that's sad. I mean, when was the last anti-war rally?
Well, I
Like
mean,
in the
anything to this
US?
extent would, I think it's been well over probably
Yeah,
back when the red line with Obama is when we had something similar, probably. So it's definitely been over a decade.
yeah, yeah, and that's sad how, like, I mean, you can't say that no serious threat of war was in over this past decade. There was, but
Oh, we're in more
it
serious
doesn't.
time than ever, and people here are just
Yeah, we
so
are, but I mean, like,
brain dead.
people's priorities have changed because of how mainstream media also manipulates. Like, what do you? I mean, I see people so concerned about, as you said, like this trends or LGBTQ rights and racism and everything else that other I mean it's good that people are conscious about those things maybe, but when it comes before people's right to just live, like, I mean, I don't understand how there's anything more important opposing wars. So yeah, it's kind of weird. But I also wanted to ask you, so do you have any idea like how many people took part in this rally?
I think like around 3,000. I would say plus or
Oh, wow.
minus 500. It's probably like 2,500 to 3,500 people or something like that.
Mhm.
It was more than 1,000 for sure. It looks in the video, it's hard to tell because, like, I was shooting the live stream for the Gray Zone, and there's all the LTE, all the networks were like jammed, so we couldn't get 4G or 5G. It was all LTE, so the stream got all choppy. So it's
Right.
kind of hard to see any resolution. But even in the high resolution photos or whatever, most of the people shooting it, which is a shame. I wish there was someone who went down to the reflecting pool and shot up on the crowd, because it's like stairs.
Mm.
So if you're at the bottom of the stairs, you can see the whole flight of stairs. But if you're at the top, you see over the top. You can't see like the whole stairs underneath. So I could only get a shot basically like the first 3 or 4 stairs worth of people, and everyone else is standing behind it. So it's hard for me to judge, but we walked, from there to the White House, and I don't know, other rallies and marches I've been at, which were have were much, much, much smaller than that, and they were, 400, 500 people that I know for sure were there. So I would say this has to be well over 1,000 people who stayed till the end to do the march. So I don't know how many people came and went, because it was my stream was like 5 hours. So I think, people couldn't probably stay the whole time. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's
although
true.
impressively, people like Jimmy Dore who were there, and some VIPs, they stayed and they marched. In my stream, I followed Jimmy Dore most of the way to the Capitol. So that was impressive to see people who were like genuine VIPs, just
Yeah,
going with their
taking yeah,
convictions.
there was also Jill Stein, right, in the rally.
Yeah, Jill Stein walked the whole way. She
Oh wow.
stayed there the whole
She's
time in the tent talking to people. She's very dedicated.
right.
I mean, they're all dedicated. Every single person who came out came
Mhm.
on their own dime and contributed their time to talk about these issues to a crowd that they had no idea how many people would be there. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard came out. She had no idea how big a crowd she was coming out to, and because she was concerned about the issue. Everyone came out because
Yeah.
they're very concerned about the issue. They didn't come out because they were paid or whatever baloney
Yeah.
comes out in
And
the
I'm
media.
sure Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people who were there did not agree on like everything. There were issues that they might have had with each other on
Well,
other
like, this is
topics,
so
but
childish. I talked to
there
everyone
was
about that. Like
yeah.
Ann Wright, I have her on the stream calling it a bunch of shit. Like, she was like, we need to end this shit, I think is what she said. I mean, I love the way
Yeah,
she said
yeah,
it so
something
directly.
like that. Yeah,
And then,
I as
like,
well.
everyone I talked to was like, yeah, this is just childish nonsense. What are we doing? So, that's really, it's almost like not worth talking about, because it's just like,
That's true.
obviously, if you're going to form coalitions, everyone has different opinions. If I had to find the only people I could do business with or do anything with were people who agreed with me on all the issues, I think it would be, well, it would be very difficult to do anything in
Yeah,
life, right? I mean, Jimmy Dore in his speech
that's
said,
true.
like, if when his house is on fire and the firemen come, if he asks them what they believe about LGBTQ rights and if they're vaccinated before they let him put out his fire, his house is just going to burn
Yeah,
down. So I mean, when
exactly.
you approach with the
That's a good
existential
example.
crisis, you need to just unite around the emergency. In medical, in
Mm,
like the ER, it's called triage, where you find the patients that are the most in their life is most in danger, and you prioritize them over the patients who have less lethal injuries or less
mm,
life-threatening injuries, and you prioritize your actions, because some actions, some things are much more serious than others, and nuclear war, uh, continuing to fund a war between two nuclear powers. I mean, it's idiotic to begin with, but it's extremely dangerous for the planet. I mean,
yeah.
if nuclear weapons start going off and it starts throwing particulate matter up into the sky and blanketing the atmosphere with nuclear pollution, it doesn't take very many of those really, really big nuclear weapons to cause a dramatic decrease in solar radiation for a while, and that's what they call nuclear winter. And we've never seen that. We've never seen these really large nuclear weapons go off en masse. And if that happened, let's say you don't live in the city, it doesn't matter. You could live in, Chile or something, but you're still going to
The
be
effect.
exposed to this massive decrease in agricultural production worldwide for at least a year or two.
Exactly.
And so we're talking about a die off and just really Mad Max style scenario if nuclear war happens. So you don't have to be blown up. Actually, being blown up probably is the better option in a nuclear war, because you're going to end up with just a hellscape. And, the rich people don't care. They have their bunkers full of food. They can go lock themselves up in a bunker for a few years and then come out when everything's better, with their whatever, their cabal of
Yeah.
friends who can
Yeah,
figure out how to bring society back in their terms. So there's literally nothing for the ruling class to fear on nuclear war. They can. It's everyone else that will suffer tremendously. So
that's true.
to
That's
to
true.
not
So
triage that, to not consider that a big problem is it's so stupid and immature. I just don't even know how to
and
understand it. But what I do know
dangerous.
is if you know organizations who did boycott this, you should just have nothing to do with them because they are toxic. And until maybe they have a HR reshuffle, they get new employees that then prove themselves to actually understand how to be activists. Currently,
That's true.
even though they have good name recognitions, Veterans for Peace and Code Pink should be ignored by activists because they're at best they're just useless. But I mean, at worst, they're actually intentionally uh, destabilizing an activist movement. So they should be
Yeah.
just completely ignored until they prove themselves to be good
Mhm.
faith actors. Because right now they're acting on behalf of the military industrial state.
Yeah, that's true. So why do you think there hasn't been much I mean, it's probably obvious. Is that true? Like I didn't see much coverage of the events on mainstream media at all. Is that also what you observed?
Well, they
Like
don't ever cover any of these things. So I think it was actually
mhm.
fascinating. I think it's like 40 or so local affiliates covered it. And I mean, you wouldn't see it in Iran because these are like local, like city,
Yeah.
like TV stations and stuff. And then Tucker Carlson covered it, I think. And
Yeah.
he has like millions and millions of viewers. And Rachel Maddow
Mhm.
covered it, but she called it like a Russian funded, like I don't know. She called it like an insignificant event, which is funny. Like, why are you covering something you're calling an insignificant event?
Exactly.
She's the
Exactly.
worst. I
Yeah.
mean, but it's great that what she said because if
Mentioned it.
any of her viewers have like a smidgen of critical thinking, some alarm bells should go off in the way she phrased this thing. But I'm afraid that most
Yeah.
people who watch her don't have any extra brain cells. So, um,
Yeah, that's
but
true.
Gray Zone Radio, which I'm a producer of, has a great discussion of her commentary, Rachel Maddow. So if anyone wants to check that out, I think it's I might be, I don't know. I'll probably end up posting that on the Max Blumenthal podcast. So
Mhm.
if
So people
if it doesn't
can listen
appear,
to.
yeah, if it doesn't appear on KPF, I don't think it's appearing on KPFK streams because they thought I didn't do a good enough job of editing out some language that Jimmy Dore had. So I think they might have just replaced it with some other show and then
Oh,
speed. But I'll be sure to put it out on Max's podcast. It's a
okay.
really great compilation of speeches and Rachel Maddow's
So, and if you
speak
do, we
down.
can just include the link to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
podcast so people can listen to it. Um, and so what was like, well, obviously you live streamed everything and you probably didn't have a chance to listen to everyone's speech, but if you were to choose three top speeches by people there, what would they be?
Well, I don't think I could do three, but I can do a few of them.
Five?
I mean, Jimmy Dore just has a way with crowds, so his speech, like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's definitely not for your grandma, but it's he has a way of especially with young people a way of communicating that's and his logic is just so solid. So he's an interesting he's one that I think drew a lot of people out there. And then Max Blumenthal
Nice.
gave a great speech, and I'd
Mm-hmm.
say
Yeah.
Max's and Chris Hedges was probably
Mm-hmm.
I mean for an intellectual Chris Hedges speech was definitely his speeches are always like that. It's just like so packed full of
Mm-hmm.
like just background and allegory and his speech. But a surprising speech to me was Dennis Kucinich. His speech was really good. It went on forever. It was by far the longest speech. It was way too long, but it
Oh.
was just
Mm-hmm.
packed full of just amazing uh, content. But yeah, Max started it off, and so he got the crowd going, and he made some very good points. I highly recommend listening to his speech. You can see it on the Gray Zone's YouTube channel. You can just type, I think it's I think the People's Party and just the War Against the Machine YouTube channel. If you just type War Against, no, Rage Against the War Machine.
Rage Against the War
Rage
Machine.
Against the War Machine. I think it's rageagainstwar.com, but you can just search for Rage Against the War Machine rally, and on their website they link to all the speeches. So yeah, Dennis Kucinich was really good. Ron Paul, he gave a speech, which was the fact that he was there was good. I don't think it was one of his best speeches, but it doesn't matter because that's not what was important about him. It was just him showing up, which was so valuable to everyone.
Especially that he had to travel all the way from.
So
that's true.
Ron Paul is just such an important figure in the anti-war movement because he's been at it so long, and he was one of the only people who served in the government who really pushed nonstop for anti-war and defunding the military. And then I would say Anya Parampel did a really good job of criticizing sort of this. She calls it like clubhouse activism or something, where it's like these activists who are trying to divide the movement just view it as like a social club instead of something that's actually existentially threatening. So I think she made good points. And then, so I would say Max, Chris Hedges, Dennis Kucinich, Anya. Those were really good.
And Jimmy Dore's.
Yeah, Jimmy Dore. Yeah. So those are the ones that I would listen to. We included all of those in the Gray Zone episode, which edited. We edited out the highlight. Tulsi Gabbard also spoke. But if you're an alternative media junkie, Tulsi Gabbard's speech was basically almost identical to other speeches she's given in the past. She talks about like that missile warning that they got in Hawaii of like a incoming missile from North Korea that turned out to be like a mistake or something, and how people reacted and freaked out for a number of hours, and how that it could be real in the next time because of the nuclear war. So it was good. It was impactful, but was for me personally was nothing new. I think I've heard her give that speech like 4 times, but it was for her being there again, it was like one of the people who her showing up was just so great. We had 4 former presidential candidates. We had Tulsi, was Jill Stein. Who were the other ones?
Was Ron Paul also?
Yeah, Ron Paul. And then we had another person. Well, Dennis Kucinich. Yeah, so we had 4 of those. They were all presidential candidates. So that was special.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think it's something to build off of. I hope people start learning how to build coalitions.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, it's good to see there. There's still people who are keeping their sanity and not falling for this divisive forces, and they want to.
I think part of it is the way you're keeping your sanity, right? Because you realize, my neighbors aren't. If you fall into the liberal mindset where you think you hate half the country because they voted for Trump, then you're just a hateful person, and you have to live your life in this well of hate rather than just trying to figure out where you can connect with them on. You don't.
That's true.
We were just interviewed by Kevin Barrett. Like, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that happens on his podcast, and I don't. Whatever. He wants to talk about some important thing with Iran. We'll talk about that together. I don't know why. Like, it shouldn't matter where you disagree. Unless it's just egregious. Like, I don't know. There could be things where I guess it's possible, but if it's just you're trying to figure out the world and you've made some mistakes in how it works, whatever. You're not calling. Nobody who spoke at that event was outright calling for harming anyone. They might have been like the perception of being unsympathetic to some woke politics, which is totally understandable because woke politics is a very new phenomenon, which some people may not be able to adapt to as quickly. So I don't even know why you should criticize people on that if you're going to throw a whole new ideology in their face and they don't like it. immediately, that doesn't seem like a reason to not oppose nuclear war with them.
That's true.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just dumb.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, like as the final question, I was just searching the name of this rally, and there is a rock band called Rage Against the Machine,
Rage
right?
Against
Do
the
you know about
Machine. Yeah, that's sort of I think where the name came
the
from. Like
name
it
got
was
from?
based
Yeah, I
off
was
that.
going to ask you
But
about it.
Rage
Okay,
Against the Machine,
interesting.
the band, is a really sad state of affairs because they were like really good. Like they were like the guy, I forget, I think at least one of them was a Harvard dropout, like really like highly educated members of the
Mm.
band who were very much against the government. They came out like during the kind of Iraq war
Oh,
protests where people were
interesting. I didn't know
realizing that,
about that. Mm.
after 9/11, where people were realizing that like the the dis, you know the level of depravity of the ruling class, and the
Mm.
a lot of the lyrics, even though some are repetitive and kind of boring, are about opposing government power. And yet, in the last
Interesting.
few years under COVID, they all just like started clicking their heels together and marching along with the power, with the government. So they're kind of a disappointment. So I probably wouldn't have picked the name
Name.
of to make a, you know, to reflect, because it definitely, if that band didn't exist, this rally would have a different name, I think. Um
Hmm.
but yeah,
Yeah, that's what I
there
wanted
is a
to
band.
know if they had an impact on choosing the name.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the history of them being anti-imperialist is important, but or
Mm.
anti-government is lies, because they knew the government was lying about stuff.
Very
It's
interesting.
important, but as long as you don't look to them currently, just as a guru for that, because they're not. They showed their cards, or they showed their lack of keeping up with current events over the last few years, because they just sadly folded.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's where a lot of people missed out, though.
a lot happened. I mean, even Kopic
Reality.
went along with the whole vaccinate the world
A
thing.
lot of people. Yeah,
Tried to push
it's
back
just
on
so
them, and I just got like vicious emails and in response that
yeah,
I didn't know what I was talking about.
absolutely. Yeah.
Now it looked very clear that we shouldn't be vaccinating the world. We should be providing clean water. If we want to help with one thing, we should provide clean water at home first, and then maybe we can do it abroad. But Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water, so I wouldn't take
I
any
mean,
claim
if
of U.S.
yeah,
humanitarian aid abroad seriously, because they're not even helping their own people. So whatever they
of
call
course.
humanitarian aid abroad is just a cover for imperialist
Yeah.
warfare.
I mean, if there was actually a disease that was spreading very fast and killing a lot of people, then maybe it would make sense to think that you have to vaccinate people as quickly as possible, even though you don't know what this vaccine is doing or
I think,
if it's as effective or not. But the thing is, that was not the case, and I don't know. Well,
but
that's
we were
on a
taking
that's
all
a
like the idea is that information was held and restricted by the government spokespeople, and then people
yeah,
were like, "Oh, we have to just believe them." Since when? Like, why? What
yeah,
back? What history have they given us to believe the government on anything? So like, there's
yeah,
none.
that's
So
true.
if you can't verify that with non-government or industry affiliated scientists, which were all basically banned off social media for talking about what they thought,
Exactly.
then you shouldn't believe the
No
government, because
freedom
they're
of
lying
speech.
about all this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay. So, anything else you want to add?
No, I just encourage people to keep their eye out for the next rally, because this was really well organized. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of rallies are not nearly this organized. They put a lot of effort into making a stage and getting speakers lined up, and they had like a tent for everyone, all the speakers to hang out. It was really a lot of anti-war rallies are just people showing up together. This was more of like an anti-war presentation plus protest. So
Mm,
it was a lot
interesting.
of fun. I mean, I didn't have that much fun because I was holding a camera for 5 hours. But I
Yeah, I
did
can
enjoy
imagine.
meeting everyone there who came. It was a real honor to like stand in front of Chris Hedges and some of these, and Ron Paul and Tulsi Gabbard. It was really that was quite the experience. So I recommend people keep their eye open for when this happens again, and if they can participate, to come out, because I think the People's Party said they're trying to get another one of these when
Great.
for late spring, I think. So we'll try and build it up and just
Great.
keep going with it, which I think is what we have to do, because these wars will never stop. There's nothing, no internal dynamic that will put the brakes on these wars, because they're very profitable. They can come up with unlimited lies. The lies don't even need to make sense anymore. They just come up with them. And we're literally funding Nazis in Ukraine. So that's not hyperbole. If you go back, like before this incursion happened, the New York Times was even covering it. Gray Zone has articles from, I think, 2018 or 19, where it was like, why is Israel funding the Azov Nazi battalion in Ukraine? It's very bizarre to have like Jewish people funding Nazis. So ostensibly Jewish people. I think a lot of Jews would question the Jewishness of their Zionist imposed brethren. But yeah, so it's obvious we're doing things that the mainstream media isn't covering for reasons that they're not talking about. And I think the only way to oppose this, you can't do it through elections, because the lies are pervasive throughout the electoral process. You can't even run if you don't basically salute Stefan Bandera, the Nazi, at this point. So it's a very strange situation, and if you want to oppose it, you just have to physically vote by showing up and putting yourself on the street. So hopefully that grows and we can actually put an end to it. Otherwise, I guess we're all just going to die in a nuclear war. And it may not be us exactly, but definitely this thing won't stop. So at some point, there's going to be a massive war the way things are going, and that may be 20 years later. Who knows? But we have to put our feet down and try and do something so that the civilization can continue. That's
Hopefully more people will open their eyes, and the next rally is even bigger than this one. Hopefully.
I don't know what else you can. I mean, honestly, it's therapeutic to come out. So if you feel like depressed and like distraught, at least you can find other people who like are understanding the situation and aren't caught up in the media psyop, which is nice to meet people who all understand that they haven't been mentally deranged by the propaganda, because it's sometimes very tiresome to be around all the deranged people.
Yeah, and if you don't get out and see these people, you are very likely to feel that you're a minority, or there are not as many people.
We're definitely a minority, but yeah, it's
but I mean, like, it feels very lonely. I mean, you could feel like you're the only one, but there are still people. Yeah, as you said, like, there is probably a minority, but it's bigger than what we might think if we just.
And it only takes 1% to 3% of society to like become agitated to the point of getting on the streets for policy to change.
Exactly.
Studies have shown. So a minority is fine. Yeah. We can be a minority, but we just need to be a vocal and mobilized minority. And I think a lot of people are just willing to sit at home and watch the live stream or whatever. And I'm happy to produce that for people who can't come, but I really don't think we should be like encouraging streaming so that people can decide not to come, because it's really important for people to show up.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Okay, thank you. And thanks everyone for watching another episode of Twice Told Tales podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and to follow us on Twitter and our Telegram channel as well.